Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. We'll wait for 2-3 minutes and then we'll start. Good afternoon. Narendra, that can't be the case. I would have to look at the paper. There would be a question for sure. You would be thinking of it as a art and culture question, but I think there would be a question for sure. I've not rectified the papers, but let me check only in front of you only. I don't think so. There can't be any question. I'm looking at the questions. There is a question with reference to religious practice in India. Sthanakvasi sect. Sthanakvasi sect belongs to whom? Sthanakvasi belongs to whom? Jain. So this was the question. They put it into art and culture, but it is a history. It's basically a question of ancient. With reference to religious practice in India, Sthanakvasi belongs to Buddhism, Jainism, Vaishnavism, Shaivism. Very easy question. Then you had a question on Buland Darwaza. Then again, with reference to Indian history, who among the following is a future Buddha yet to come and save the world? Avalokeshwar, Lokeshwar, Maitreyi, Padampani. What is the answer? I'm just looking at the question paper. It's not in front of you. Again, Maitreyi, Avalokeshwar, Lokeshwar, Padampani is the same person only. So again, easy question. Then there will always be questions. Don't ever think about the fact that there are no questions. There are always questions. Two questions were there. It was basically the combination that year was 2 plus 3 plus 6, which is 6 questions art and 2 questions ancient, 3 questions medieval, 6 included art and culture and modern. We'll do those questions, don't worry. I'll show it to you also, but there will be always a question like that. That's a standard thing. Why did you ask me that question generally? He thought that 2018 there was no question, so no need to do ancient. Okay. This class yes, already started. Okay. Now we have to go till 5 p.m. Remember, 5 to 5:30 is your break. And the agenda for the next 3 hours is post-Mauryan dynasties. Don't worry about that, doesn't matter. Okay. No issues. So post-Mauryan dynasties, that is most probably that Kushal publication thing. Post-Mauryan dynasties are the dynasties which came after 184 BCE and dominated till 300-350 CE. This is the basic time period in which we are discussing, or we are actually moving in. We have already discussed Paleolithic, Mesolithic, Neolithic, Industrial civilization, Vedic, Megalithic, Sangam, Maurya, Mahajanpada. So now after Maurya comes our post-Mauryan politics. Now this is an area where there are multiple confusions, multiple dynasties, multiple rulers, and multiple contributors to certain processes. It's a very interesting phase because it's also the period of Varna Samskara or caste formation. We'll discuss that. So what we are going to do first is understand the timeline. Then we will discuss their political history. Again, no unnecessary facts I will tell you about them. Then their specific contribution. Then we will talk about Vikram era, then Saka era, and then we will go about talking about caste formation and what we call as economy. And very simply, we will discuss the Shungas, Saka, Indo-Greeks, Kushana, Satavahana, and the Sangam. Sangam we've already done. Now we will discuss Shaka, Kushana, Indo-Greeks. Here I need again your concentration, and more than that, I need your imagination. So if everybody is with me, everybody's here, can we start our discussion? Because the next 1 hour, 1.5 hours is going to be extremely important for us to understand what was happening to India generally. Can we do that? First, I will give you through map-based, then I will give you a flowchart, and then thereafter we will discuss each and every topic in that context. Okay, great. So now I need your imagination. Period is 170 BC. Not 120, let's take 200 BC. So during this period of 200 BC, there would be 2 political units in the Indian subcontinent. You would have one, the Mauryas, and the other one would be a West Asian sector. You have the Mauryas, and you would have the Seleucid dynasty. There are 2 basic political units which are there at this point of time. Both share a basic border, which is the northwestern sector. Now, 184 BCE to 150 BCE, 3-4 things will happen together. And very simply, 184, Brihadrat will be killed by Pushyamitra Shunga. And from the erstwhile, if you want to call, 1 second, let me make a table box. From the erstwhile Mauryan dynasty, the first political unit will come out, who are called the Shungas. 184 BCE. In 184, you will have the Shungas, who will start to dominate in the eastern sector, in what used to be the core area and the areas in and around the Chota Nagpur Plateau under the Shungas. We already know that the Sangam polities are present here. We can add to them here also. Now the Sangam polities are still there, but the Mauryan dynasty has started to decline. So the first state which comes are the Shungas. Pushyamitra Shunga very simply captures the power, how Chandragupta Maurya had done with Dhanananda, and now the Shungas dominate the eastern sector till more or less modern day Delhi in that regard. Now there is one more change which happens in the Seleucid dynasty sector. In Seleucid dynasty, a person called Diodotus I will kill the last ruler of the Seleucid dynasty, and he will establish his new rule from what is called area called Bactria, and they are called Indo-Bactrians or Indo-Greeks. Because Diodotus was a Greek, they're called Indo-Bactrian, Indo-Greeks for a very simple reason, because they used to rule over erstwhile part of the Seleucid Empire, and also it used to enter or very simply cover certain parts of India also. So this is basically the Indo-Greeks, and the Indo-Greeks will emerge around 165 BCE, meaning 20 years after the Shungas were able to capture power. So from the Mauryas came the Shungas, and from the Seleucid dynasty came the Indo-Greeks, first two units of the post-Mauryan period. Now, in the same period, 184 BCE to 150 BCE, there's also another set of changes which are happening across the world. So you have the Shungas, you have the Indo-Greeks. Let's make it a little bit more. We make it like this. If this is the Indian subcontinent, if this is the Indian subcontinent, what is going to be in the north of the Indian subcontinent? What is going to be in the north of Indian subcontinent? Indian subcontinent north. China, come on, basic geography, not Russia. You have China, Tibet and China. So you have the Himalayas here, and you have Chinese sector, and then you have Central Asian sector. Now, the simple point is that we know that here the Shungas have emerged, 184 BC. The Sangam polities already dominate the southern sector, peninsular India, and we also know that near the Hindu Kush, we have the Indo-Greeks. I'll show it through your maps also, but I want you to first imagine it, because if you will be able to imagine it, you will always remember it. So you have Shungas and you have the Indo-Greeks. Anybody has any issue till this point? 65. No? Okay. Now, what happens is that the Chinese empire starts to expand under a ruler called Huan, and there is one tribe here. And they're called the Yuchi tribe. And there's also one more tribe here. And the name of this tribe, I'll just remove Central Asian sector. I'll write it somewhere else. You have one more tribe here. This is the Central Asian sector. Now, this tribe is called Scythian or Saka. Now, what happens is that the Chinese empire creates a pressure on the Yuchi, which is that this sector starts to expand for the Chinese. So the Yuchis are in a way pushed by the Chinese empire, and what the Yuchi will do is they will push onto the Scythian or Saka, what we call as tribe. They are basically a Siberian, it has a little bit of Russian, Central Asian origin type understanding. They're not Chinese, neither are Yuchi the Chinese, both are what are called Central Asian tribes having their own religion, their own understanding. Now, the Scythian part, the Scythians, the Sakas, can they go southwards? No. So what they do is that they very simply move around the Indo-Greeks, enter into modern day Iran and an area called Parthian, and they thrust into the Indian subcontinent and become what we call as the Sakas. In the 150 BCE period. Half of it is in modern day Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, but there are two dynasties which are in India, which are called the Kadamka and the Shatratas. We'll discuss that. The names I will discuss with you. But basically, North India became extremely unstable. And in place of the Mauryan dynasty, we see the rise of three dynasties together, which are called the Indo-Greeks, Sakas, and the Shungas. Shungas the first, Indo-Greeks the second, and Sakas the third. And the reason why the Sakas are also called Sintho-Parthian, because they're Scythian, they come from the what you call the Jatraks, the Darya river in Uzbekistan and the Tajikistan border. They came from there, they entered into the Parthian area, so they become Scythian-Parthian, and Scythian-Parthian or Sintho-Parthians are in India called the Sakas, and therefore Saka, Indo-Greek, Shungas basically are here as the three basic empires. Now I'll show it to you on a map very simply. So you have the Shungas which emerge in the standard sector of the Mauryans. This is the easiest out of all of them. This is basically the period of 184 BCE. However, the Seleucid Empire thereafter will very simply break into from this area. They will rule from Bactria, so they will be called Indo-Bactrians or Indo-Greeks, and the Indo-Greeks will emerge in the period of they will emerge in the period of 165 BCE. And what will happen is that in the Chinese sector, once the Chinese dynasty or Chinese empire is going to basically start to expand, it will push the Yuchi out of this area, and the Yuchis will therefore push the Shakas. The Shakas will enter the Parthian sector, and from the Parthian sector, they will establish themselves in this sector of India. Very simply, the Saka area. This is the period of 150 BCE. So you have the Shungas, the Indo-Greeks, and the Sakas. The Sakas were somewhere here, but they were pushed to Indian subcontinent because of the movement of the Yuchi. Yuchi, I will tell you very simply, is a very important dynasty for us later, but we will discuss who are the Yuchis later. Simple point is, along with the Sangam polities, this is the political situation of India after the decline of the Mauryans till 150 BCE. Is there any issue? Where is Parthian? This area is called Parthian. Anybody any issue here? Indo-Greeks, Shungas, Shakas. Come on. What is the confusion? First, Shungas come out of Mauryas itself. The Indo-Greeks come out of the Seleucid Empire. Chronology is even simpler. Shunga, Indo-Greek, Shaka, 184, 165, 150. So what is the issue? They come first, they come second, they come third. And this movement is also happening at that point of time when the Indo-Greeks are rising. So chronology should not be an issue. I will give you the chronology in a separate flowchart itself. Second is Indo-Greeks, 165 will come first. So don't now make me do the BCC thing. 165 will be first and then 150 will be there. So very simply, Shungas are first, then Indo-Greeks, then Shakas. That I will do separately, chronology. The simple point is, do you understand the movement? We started with Maurya, Seleucid, Sangam. We came to Shunga and Indo-Greeks and Indo-Bactrians. And now we have reached to a point where we have three major dynasties in North India, Shunga, Indo-Greek, Shaka, and the Sangam polities, who did not fight with anybody. They remained where they were. They were not fighting with anybody in the North. No one really cared. No one was actually even trying to fight with each other. Are we clear with regards to this map? Because there are two polities which are still left. Everybody has to say yes, then I move forward. Come on. Okay. Now, between the period of 150 BCE to the period of, for example, 10 CE, North India remains the way it does. This is an oversimplification, but for the purpose of our analysis, this is the way we are trying to understand. Can you explain Shunga? Pushyamitra Shunga was the Senapati of Brihadra. He kills him and establishes Shunga dynasty. But Shunga dynasty is not able to control the expanse of the Mauryan dynasty, and Mauryan dynasty is now fragmented into three basic polities. You have the Shungas, you have the Indo-Greeks, and you have the Sakas, and you have the Sangam polity. These are the four basic empire units in the Indian subcontinent. This is 184. This is 165, this is 150, and they used to exist previously also. Yuchi are sitting here. Yuchi tribe is sitting here, and Chinese empire is expanding. Chinese empire. Anybody has any issue in this? We've already done this. I'm still just creating the map again. Anybody has any issue here? Did they enter via Baluchistan? Yes, they obviously did enter from that sector only. That used to be called Parthian. Okay, no issues here. Okay, now in the Deccan sector, just in Peninsula sector, there will rise a new Brahmanical dynasty, and they will be called the Satavahanas. They will rise in the period of 100 CE, and very simply, they will become the fifth important political structure. They were Brahmins who will usurp power and emerge as important rulers. And very simply, the Satavahanas will complete the basic picture of India by the turn of the BCE to CE. However, this will not be the way India will remain, because between 10 CE and 200 CE, a very important thing will happen. From whom do they usurp? No, they were local powers, usurp power generally. They were local powers and they usurp power generally, so they're not doing it from 7. They're generally there. So they are able to usurp. If you want to say not usurp, I'll use the word consolidate. If that is a better word for you, I'll use that. They consolidate power. That is a better word. Okay. Now what happens is that you have the Shungas, you have the Indo-Greeks, you have the Sakas, you have Satavahana, and you have Chola, Chera, Pandya, which is together nothing but Sangam. Satavahanas came in 100 BCE. Now what happens is, the Yuchi tribe, which was just minding their own business in Central Asia, where the Shakas used to be, were further pressurized by the Chinese empire, because China was expanding towards its west. And what happens is that the Yuchi tribe had no other option but to come into the Indian subcontinent. But because when they were entering, Indo-Greeks and Shungas had become more or less useless, the Yuchi tribe will usurp and emerge as the biggest player in North India. And the name by which we know the Yuchi tribe in India is called Kushanas. Basically, the Yuchi tribe here is also the Kushanas. The Yuchi tribe here is also the Kushanas. The Kushanas' original name is actually Yuchi. And what the Kushanas actually do, one second, it's first time again, the focus is shifting of the camera. So, very simply, the Kushanas are going to take away power away from the Shungas and the Indo-Greeks. And they will very simply dominate and take this whole sector and emerged as a single largest power in the place of the Shungas and the Indo-Greeks. So again, repeating myself, now we will only have 1, 2, 3, and 4 political units. Here we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 political units, and the Kushanas were waiting in the Central Asian sector. So to just show you evolution, and then I will discuss a chronological order. Mauryas and Seleucid dynasty is there. That will give way to Shungas and the Indo-Greeks. That will in turn give way to the Shungas, Indo-Greeks, and because of the movement in the Central Asian sector, Yuchi tribe will create, or the Kushanas will create pressure on the Shakas. Shakas will enter into India and tuck between the Shungas and the Indo-Greeks. Thereafter, when the basic polity was more or less stabilizing, Satavahanas will emerge, consolidate power, and emerge in the Deccan sector. And thereafter, by the time the Satavahanas become more or less clear, by 30 CE, the Kushanas will usurp power, and because of the pressure created by the Chinese sector, they will take the erstwhile Indo-Greek and Shunga sector. And in India, Kushanas, Shakas, Satavahanas, and the Sangam polities will exist as the main power till the 3rd century CE. No, river Indus will not act as a barrier here. Not that. Yeah, if this makes sense, this basic evolution makes sense to you, then I will give you the chronological order. That is equally important, where you need to understand how they come through and how they are generally. Yes? Come on. Okay. Okay. So from where Kushanas emerged? Kushanas were already there. They were called the Great Yuchi tribe. They were a Central Asian tribe. They were always there. They were the ones who led to the Shakas to come to India, and they were thereafter in turn also pushed into India, all because of the Chinese consolidation. See, this is the area of the Satavahanas, Sangam Satavahanas. Let me give you a basic understanding. See, north, south. One second. Please pay attention. Period. North, south. You have Yuchi is not a Chinese tribe, the Central Asian tribe. Why would the Chinese fight the Chinese? They are a non-Chinese Central Asian tribe. North, you have. South, you have Sangam polities. Then okay. Now does it make sense? Okay. Just to put it in the simplest of orders, Maurya, Sangam, Shunga, Indo-Greeks, Sakas, Satavahana, Kushana. Now done. 184, 165, 100, not 100, 150, 130 CE. And Sangam are contemporaries to everyone. Indo-Greeks replaced by Kushanas, yes. Indo-Greeks and Shungas both. The Kushanas will emerge here. Sakas will still be here. Sangam are still here. And before that, you had the Shungas, Indo-Greeks. So, simple point. Maurya, Seleucid, Sangam. So, the Shungas, Indo-Greeks. Yes, Kushanas will engulf Shungas and the Indo-Greeks both. Indo-Greeks and the Shungas both will be gone. So, you have Yuchi movement to lead into Sakas, and these were the 5 dynasties, and thereafter, the Shungas and the Indo-Greeks will be served by the Kushanas. It's not that hard, but because multiple movement, that is why it is a little bit confusing. Yuchi are Kushanas, yes. Yuchi is nothing but Kushanas. Their name in India was Kushanas, but they are originally called Yuchi. Parthian is an area. Parthian is an area, not a dynasty. So, very simply, Parthian is this area. You will see this area is called Parthian. Parthian is modern day Iran. So you have it here also. Shunga, Indo-Greek, Saka, Kusana. Oh, ignore this. I'm trying to keep it simple. That is why I'm basically giving you starting dates and then end dates. And this is Sangam and Satavahanas. Are we clear with regards to this? Anybody has any issue, want to call, want to ask me? Right now ask me. Because if you will not understand this, then what will happen is you will ask me who Kusana, who Indo-Greek, what Yuchi. I'm basically giving you a very important gist of something you will not find in the book. So please tell me, is this making sense? Is it clear? Here questions are made mostly because it's a confusing sector, confusing area generally. Everyone? Okay. There is no original language of Yuchi tribe. They would have their own dialect. I don't really care what is the original language, but not documented in that regard. Okay, no issue. Okay. So now we can discuss the individual dynasties. So we had to do timeline. We've done that. Now we will move towards the political history and the specific contribution of each of these. Okay. So let's talk about the Shungas. Shungas, you have the following rulers: Pushyamitra Shunga, who's the founder, his son Agnimitra, and Devabhuti is the last ruler. These are the three you need to remember. Agnimitra is important because Kalidas actually refers to Agnimitra in one of his most celebrated of dramas, Malvika Agnimitra, and therefore you need to know generally his name. So there are three names you need to remember here: Pushyamitra, Agnimitra, and Devabhuti. But why is Pushyamitra Shunga so important? See, Pushyamitra Shunga, as I said, Pushyamitra Shunga was actually the Senapati, commander in chief of Brihad Ratha, and he will kill the ruler because of his frustration with his policies and weak leadership. And generally, he was more or less in a way angry with the fact that how Buddhism had been pushed quite a lot because he's a Brahmin. And this is the irony that a Brahmin had become a Senapati, which is a Kshatriya's position. Now, once he will very simply be able to usurp power away, he will not be able to hold on to the area of Mauryas, only the eastern sector. And very simply, because of this eastern sector dominated by him, the simple point of the matter is that allowed for the Indo-Greeks to enter into India. He is known for two very important things. First is revival of Sanskrit language, which had basically been struggling against Pali Prakrit because of the rulers pushing it, specifically the Buddhist rulers and Ashoka. And he's also the one who very simply gave patronage to a very important person called Patanjali, not Brahmdev Baba Patanjali, but this is the literature expert or literary expert called Patanjali, who wrote the Mahabhashya. And Mahabhashya is very important because it's a Sanskrit text which has a commentary on Panini's Ashtadhyayi. And Mahabhashya by Patanjali are considered one of the most important texts of Sanskrit literature and grammar in that sense. So first process is that he was, according to the Harsh Charitra, Pushyamitra, commander-in-chief of the Mauryan army, killed Brihadrat. Thereafter, a military coup in turn led to the Mauryan empire getting destroyed. But the dates are 184, 187, different dates are used, but we believe that it is 184. Pushyamitra was not able to extend his empire in the whole area. And an important concept which emerged under him was also the concept of caste, which I will discuss with you once I'm done with the basic political history of these dynasties, specifically the Shungas. So Shungas, three basic things you need to remember: revivalism of Sanskrit language, Patanjali, and the way he captured power. Can you remember these basic points? Nothing more, nothing less, because then I will go into the Indo-Greeks. Three things: Pushyamitra Shunga, Agnimitra, Devabhuti, and Patanjali, and revivalism of Sanskrit. I will discuss what is caste formation once I'm done with the basic political history of the Indo-Greeks and the Sakas. Thereafter, it will make more sense. Can I do this? Can we move on? Please don't sit there with a confused face, because there are multiple dynasties. It will start to become heavy after a point. So I want everybody's concession and concentration here. Come on. Okay. Now come the Indo-Greeks, also called Indo-Bactrians, because they ruled from an area called Bactria. Please simplify. Simplification. You can remember how he came to power. One. Second, how he expanded only or was only in the eastern sector. Third, revivalism of Sanskrit language. Wait, now tell me what I need to simplify in this. 3 points I made. What do I need to simplify in this? Okay, sir. Very good. Now, Indo-Greeks, Indo-Bactrians. When we talk about Indo-Greeks, Indo-Bactrians, they have 2 sectors. One is called, have you heard of the mountain range called Hindu Kush? It is part of which geographical formation? Does anybody know it? It's called knot. What is the knot? Very good. Yes. Part of the Pamir knot. Very good. Wherein the Himalayas and the hill ranges of Afghanistan all come together, and it is called the Pamir knot. Now, north of it and south of it, they have 2 sectors. One is the North Indo-Bactrian sector and the South Indo-Bactrian sector. Basically, this is the Indian sector and this is the Afghanistan sector. The origin of the Indo-Greeks, as you remember, is very, very clear. It is Diodotus I usurped power from the Seleucid dynasty. Now, out of the Indo-Greek rulers, the most known, the most celebrated, and the most relevant to us, which also came in the examination this time, 2023, was, his name is Menander. Ruler is Menander. But he had a conversation with a Buddhist monk called Nagasena, and he documented that in a text called Milindapana, and Menander's Buddhist name was Milinda. Very simply, it is believed that Menander was influenced by Buddhism. Buddhism was extremely tolerant, that is, allowed for the newer, what we call as foreign dynasties, to get assimilated into India, and Menander is a very good example of that. So the first major factual understanding you need to know, most important fact you need to know about the Indo-Greeks, is a person called Menander, also known as Milinda, and his very important conversation with Nagasena, which in turn produces a text called Milindapana, which very simply tells the conversation between Menander and Nagasena. The second major contribution of the Indo-Greeks was that they introduced in the Indian subcontinent, for the first time, proper coinage, and those are called the Indo-Greek coins. Circular, same weight, had name of ruler and date, and also had portrait of ruler on obverse with Greek gods on the reverse. Very simply, previously, which type of coin was there in Indian subcontinent? Which type of coin was in Indian subcontinent? Very good. Punch marked coins were crude, irregular. There's one more distinction which the Indo-Greeks have, is that they introduced gold coins into the Indian subcontinent. However, they never circulated gold in South Indo-Bactrian sector. What is the difference between introduction and circulation? Circulation, more billions are traded, like a 2000 rupee note. Circular means whole area, distribution at mass level, circulated. Introduce first, don't use it for trade. Introduce means just bring a thing, a trade in bullion. Circulation becomes valid, gold coin or not for transaction. Nice. See, there's a difference between these two words. Introduce means that you have the technology or thing. Circulation means mass usage or in everyone's hand. So very simply, the Indo-Greeks mostly kept the gold in the northern sector, but when it came to the Indian sector, they did not actually spread it. So they introduced it, but they did not circulate it. It was in circulation also in north of Hindu Kush, but south of Hindu Kush it was not there. This is a very important distinction which we need to know. So Bactria is the old name of an area lying to the south of the Oxus River, and in the 3rd century BCE, Deiotarus I revolted against the Seleucids and developed an independent kingdom. The Bactrians extended their control over areas south of Hindu Kush also, and by the what we call as 150 BCE period, or rather 165 to 150 BCE period, they were controlling most parts of North India and parts of the north of Hindu Kush. One of the most important Indo-Greek rulers is a person called Menander. I just need to add Menander, who is identified as Milinda in the Nagasena text of Milindapana. He used to control Bactria and northwestern India also. His wife, Agatha Kothia, ruled after his death in the name of his son Strato. So 1, 2, 3, a rare queen ruling in the name of her son as a regent. They replaced the punch mark coins with double die struck coins. Double die struck coin. First point again, what first point? Menander is the one who is identified as Milinda, who has been seen in Nagasena as documented in Milindapana. This is the text, Buddhist text. Menander is the most important ruler generally because he was influenced by Buddhism and is the most well documented ruler also. His wife ruled in the name of his son, Strato, till he became a major, or what we call as an adult. They replaced punch mark coins with double die struck coins. Punch mark coins mostly have only one basic symbol on the front. Double die struck means that there is 2 dies and both dies have a certain symbolism on them. And you pour in the metal and then push it together to get a coin which is double die struck. The coins of the Indo-Greeks are the most important contribution of them to the Indian subcontinent, because what they had was a very important distinction. The portrait of the king on the obverse, which is the front, and on the reverse, they used to have Greek gods. This is Menander and the Pallas. The Pallas is a god of the Greeks. This is very, very important because along with the inscription which was given on these different coins, it allows us to basically get to know about political history, about economic history, about the way or about how did the rulers look like, and further their dating. So the coinage which the Indo-Bactrians used was made out of gold, silver, copper, and nickel. However, as I said, in the north of the Hindu Kush, it was the Greek standard, Greek weightage, and Greek gods Zeus, Apollo, Athena. And in the south of the Hindu Kush, they only circulated silver and copper, and mostly square in shape. Remember, if it is square and it is silver, it is mostly a coin of the Indian subcontinent. Bilingual scripts, Greek and Khoroshti, but very rarely Brahmi, because they are using their own language and script, which is Khoroshti and Greek. This is the Khoroshti script. We know this is Greek script, from which we got all the COVID-19, alpha, beta, omicron, delta, we get out of this only. And this is Brahmi. So Brahmi was actually never used. It was Greek, and the Khoroshti script which was actually used. They mostly followed Greek religion, Greek gods, but they were influenced by Buddhism also. Yes, Sati. They were influenced by Buddhism also. Some of them did convert to Buddhism also. Now, before I go to Vikram era, Saka era, eras and all, are we clear with regards to 2 things? Shunga, Sanskrit revival, Indo-Greeks, coinage, gold, and what we call as Greek influence. Are these 4 points clear? Are these 4 points clear? If somebody asks you about Menander, you'll be able to answer. If somebody asks you who introduced proper coinage in India, you'll be able to answer. If somebody asks you who brought in Greek influence, you will be able to answer. You'll also be able to answer who introduced gold coinage in India. You will also be able to tell us that how Sanskrit revivalism is there. You also know the Khoroshti script and what is the difference between Brahmi and Sanskrit. Again, Abhijit, you're asking me the difference between a car and a bike. Brahmi is a script, Sanskrit is a language. Proper coinage, whom? Proper coinage, Indo-Greeks. Indo-Greeks are the ones who bring in proper coinage in India. Sanskrit revivalism means revival of Sanskrit language. Revivalism of Sanskrit languages, Sanskrit now starts to get royal patronage. Yes, no circulation, introduction. I said introduced gold coinage. Second point very simply tells you that in the north of Hindu Kush, you have the gold coins which have Greek standard, Greek weightage. South has a different weightage also, different standard also, which is the quality of gold, quality of silver, and also shape. So shape is also different, type is also different, metal is also different. Zeus, Athena, Apollo are Greek gods. I hope you know these things, which is Zeus, Athena, Apollo. These are the Greek gods. Zeus is the god of thunder, Athena is the god of war and wisdom, this and that. The same way we have gods, they have gods. Yes, are these points clear? Why no circulation? You tell me, Shushmita, would you circulate a very, very important precious metal in the sector which is the furthest away from you? It's a basic economic logic. You will always circulate it in your core area, which is the Bactrian area. Why would you circulate it into the Hindu Kush, south of Hindu Kush, which is away from your main center itself? Please, a lot of you are sitting there not saying anything. You have to be please more vocal. Yes, no, something. I have to say something, because it is going to become more and more heavier. I am now going to go into Vikram and Shaka era. Please have to pay attention. Okay, all clear. Now, in the first class, I told you something, which is that time is a man-made concept. I hope you remember that. Now, just to repeat for the people who were not there or did watch just a recording of it, simple point is that there is no natural indicator, there is no Akashvani, there is no announcement which happens which says that today is 27th of August or it is the 15th, it is 3/8. No, nothing like that. So time is a man-made concept. So if there is a consensus, you and me can also start a calendar. We all follow what is called the Gregorian calendar, which is this AD, BC, BC, CE concept. However, you and me can start our own calendar if we want. For example, I want to argue that today is 01 Abhishek era or Abhishek calendar. That this year is 01 Abhishek calendar. So in order to come to the fact that this is 01 Abhishek calendar, I have a reference point that 2023 is 01 of Abhishek calendar. If all of us start to use this concept of Abhishek calendar, we can have an alternative calendar also. Now what happened was that historians found in Barnala, an area which is in Rajasthan, an inscription. They found an inscription. And the problem with that inscription was that it referred to a new type of era, which is called Vikram era. Very simply, an alternative calendar. But now the challenge was that how do we get to know what is the exact date in Gregorian? Because in that text, it said 284 and 335 Vikram Samvat. What is Barnala? Barnala is a place. Now the point was we were able to come to the way or the date by actually referencing to other texts and also doing an archaeological analysis of the inscription itself. And it turns out that the Vikram era or Vikram Samvat is a calendar which was started by a ruler of Ujjain called Vikram Aditya. We know nothing more of him. We have stories of that Vikram stories basically based on Vikramaditya only, but those are not real stories, but actually epics in that regard. But we know nothing more of Vikram or Vikramaditya. We just know that he used to rule over Ujjain, and we believe that he defeated the Sakas when they were entering this sector in 56 BCE, and when he emerged victorious to celebrate his victory, he started a new calendar. So the concept of Vikram or Vikram era is that it is based on the legendary king. Samvat means year. King Vikramaditya of Ujjain started Vikram Samvat when he defeated the Shakas in the 56 BCE period. And very simply, 57 BCE is one Vikram. So now tell me one thing. If I have to convert 2057 into CE, into Vikram, what should I do? Very good. Subtract 57. Why am I subtracting? No, it's not subtracting. It's addition. That is, Adit is right. That is Saka. Add. That is why I went with your logic, but I realized add 57. See, why? You have to look at it like this. 2057. If your reference point is in BCE, you would have to add, right? This is not a CSAT question. Understand this. If your reference point is in BCE, in order to convert Vikram era into Gregorian, you would have to add 57. So one of you said the other way around. Simple point is 284 Vikram was actually 227 AD. So very simply, you have to add to become Vikram. So if I have to very simply come to the conclusion, I add, because I have to come till 0. Because my reference point is in BCE, I have to add. So there are two types of things which can be asked out of Vikram era. Nobody is asking you a numerical, that's a separate issue altogether. They can ask you who started the Vikram calendar? What is the answer to that question? Who started the Vikram calendar? Vikramaditya of Ujjain. Why did he start the Vikram calendar? To mark his victory over the Sakas or he defeated Sakas. Very good. Now, ironically, in our history, there is one more calendar which we use. There's one more calendar which we use, which is the official national calendar of India, which is called the Saka calendar. And the irony is, when Vikram defeated Sakas, he started Vikram era. When the Shaka king Chastana won over the Ujjain and Deccan sector, he celebrated it in 78 CE by starting new calendar, which is Saka calendar. And the Saka calendar we know quite a lot about also. We have the seasons, we have the months, everything. The irony is that if you will go with Arya Sharma, which is a very old book and the old research, they will argue that Kanishka started Saka calendar. However, the problem is Kanishka is not a Saka ruler but a Kushana ruler. And now there is enough evidence to tell us that very simply, Saka era was not started by Kanishka but was started by Chastana. The beginning of Shaka era is widely equated with the accession of Chastana in 78 CE. Inscriptions dated to 11 and 52 have been found in the Kutch region, and the Saka era 11 and the 52 was very simply, we had to add 78 to get to the CE concept itself. But the point was, there was wide view previously, wherein Kanishka 1 was seen as the one who started this calendar, but latest research by Henry Falk tells us, as it was started by Chastana, and Kanishka is a Kushana ruler and not a what we call a Saka ruler. But why am I discussing eras with you? Because now basically in your larger understanding, in India we have three calendars: Gregorian calendar, Vikram calendar, we have Saka calendar, and we have one more which I will discuss, which is called Gupta era or Gupta calendar. This is the one which we follow today, which is 27/08/2023. Vikram is 57 BCE as the starting point. This is 78 CE. This is 316 CE, which I will discuss with you later. But why is this important? Because Saka calendar is actually a national calendar. It's a national calendar. So anytime you will see any notification, in one side it will say 27/08/2023, any government notification. But on the other side, it will give us the Saka year. How do you come to Saka? To make 2023 CE into Saka, what do I need to do? Very good. I need to subtract 78. Why? Because on the number line, I was 57, so I added. Now I'm forward 78, so I subtract to come to 0. So very simply, it will become how much? 1945. 1945 Saka year. So this is, see, nobody's asking you to convert either way, but I'm just telling you the origin. Vikramaditya of Ujjain, Chastana of the Saka dynasty. Chastana defeated whom? That is not Vikramaditya, but some local ruler in that regard. See, it's like a back and forth. But Chastana was the king of the Sakas who was fighting to enter into the Indian subcontinent. It's a back and forth. Wherein Vikramaditya of Ujjain won, he stopped the entry of the Sakas. See, Sakas very simply were trying to establish themselves in the Ujjain sector. Vikramaditya of Ujjain stopped it, so very simply he started his own calendar. But when after the death of Vikramaditya they were able to dominate, we don't know which ruler they defeated, but it is said that once he won over this sector, he started his own calendar called the Saka calendar. So for you, for your art and culture concept, Gregorian, Vikram, Saka, Gupta. Anybody has any issue here? Saka is a way of saying that we don't want to follow Christian thing or a colonial thing. The British introduced to us the Gregorian calendar, and we tend to use Vikram. Vikram is mostly used for Hindu rituals. Saka is mostly used for national calendar concepts, right? So very simply, add for Vikram, subtract for the concept of what we call as Vikram. Done, everybody. It's the basics of how you are placed on the number line. So there are two things which you need to know. If this is clear, then I'll give you a break, because I think if I start to go into the political history of Saka, it will become a little bit heavy. Sushmita, it's not addition, it's about from which you want to convert. If you want to convert CE into Vikram, you add. And if you want to convert Vikram into CE, then obviously it is addition and subtraction, about which side you see it. So we take it from the point where we are. So 57, we add when we are in the concept of Vikram, subtract when it is in the concept of Saka. Simple, right? If all this is clear, then I'll come to their political history after the break. Is this clear? Come on. Yes, no, I have to say something which will become heavier and heavier as we go on. Come on. Can I take a break? What all means question can be asked from this concept? Vivek, you tell me one thing. Does ancient medieval come in mains examination? Ancient medieval comes in mains examination. So firstly, that question is wrong and irrelevant. But you can basically get a simple question. Who started and what is the reason? Nobody's asking you a numerical. Vikramaditya dynasty. Anu, there's nothing on Vikramaditya dynasty. We just know that there was one ruler called Vikramaditya of Ujjain. We have no other historical details about him, unfortunately. There's no dynasty. He does not belong to any dynasty. He's a standalone ruler we have no idea of. We know about him through the different what we call as stories of Vikram Betal, but we have nothing else about him. We just know that he ruled over Ujjain. Was he part of any dynasty? What was his basic area? We have no idea. Yes? Okay. So we take a break here. And I hope till this point everybody is with me. We've discussed the evolution of the Indian subcontinent via the maps. We've discussed over and above that the three. So we've discussed this. Chungas is done. Then Indo-Greeks is done. Sakas is done. Saka political history I have to discuss with you. In between, I discussed the concept of what we call as Saka and Vikram era. So we started here with political history we are doing. Vikram and Saka are done. Yes. So Maurya side, Shunga, Indo-Greeks, Sakas. I'm now going to discuss political history after the break. Then we'll go into the Kushanas, Satavahanas. But once we do take the political history of the Sakas, I will discuss caste formation with you, which is going to be important. So let's take a break here. Vikram Arjuna and Vikramaditya are different, yes. Okay, Saka. So we come back at what is it? 326, 2027. We come back at 3:40, 45. You want 10 minutes, 15 minutes? Fully divided over what? 3:45. I see you at 3:45. Digest all of this. Next break at exact 5. Political history. Interesting things. Vishnu, I can't do that. The annotations once generated, I don't have control over that. So when part B will close, it will generate its own. So even if I open it, I can change it. If it doesn't make sense, you tell me. I'll tell you over email. That's not an issue. Anybody has any question? Anybody wants to call? Live call feature has been enabled. Any doubt till this point? Generally, I have some students still missing. I'll wait for 1 more minute for them. If not, I'll start. Because Ashoka knew what to write on what edict, and no other ruler in the history of India has generally used edict to send his message. That is what public relations. Pradeep, that I will discuss with you when I discuss art and culture. But what subject are you struggling with? Answer writing, you're saying, give me some answer writing tips. Which subject? Which paper are you getting low marks in answer writing? Shiva, you just email me. Abhishek.mishra19@byju's.com. I'll send you the details. Economics, meaning GS paper 3. GS paper 3, you're struggling. Tell me GS papers. Because answer writing happens according to GS papers, right? So GS paper 3, every GS paper has a different purpose altogether. I'm scared to write any answers. The point is, I'll be very blunt here, that topic-wise topics, meaning, see, there's a very standard thing. Answer writing, which we'll discuss when we will do art and culture. Answer writing is firstly subjective, and the only way to master it is practice. There's no other way. If you write slowly, practice. If you make a lot of grammatical mistakes, practice. If you are not going to practice, then there is no magic potion, there is no shortcut to increasing your speed, your grammar, and your answer writing ability. So you write a bad answer, write a good answer, write something. Because writing is a process of very simply putting your thoughts down. Most of you don't know how to answer between 150 to 250 words. Because what you do is that you try to write a school type answer, which is, or you never write an answer, you like to write everything. You want to show to the examiner that I know everything. But the point is you have to be very specific. What the examiner is asking you, you have to write that only. Now, each and every paper has a separate purpose, a separate way of writing. For example, GS paper 1, you have, for example, history. History is mostly historical context, specific answer, conclusion. Geography is a little bit difficult because it is technical and you need to write it down in the right way and in the right process itself. Polity will be dynamic questions, so you need to know current affairs, and equally you have to add current affairs. Economics is again current affairs plus static portion, so again you need an application of knowledge more than anything. Ethics is a totally different cup of tea altogether. Science and technology, factual questions have to be more specific with regards to the process itself. So each and every subject has a separate demand. But the point is, anything will be done through practice only. Only if you will practice, then only you will learn to write answers better. There can be multiple videos which you can watch. You can watch as many videos, as many experts, as many this, that, whatever. They will give you the different rules, regulations, this, that. Learn introduction, learn the this, that. Practice. They tend to argue that you learn introduction, so you make introductions for each and every topic. That is not physically possible. That is not sustainable. You have to somehow know how to construct an answer, how to structure an answer, and first you will write slowly, then you will write in more words. But only when you have written your maybe 50th, 60th answer, that you will start to understand, okay, I have to write at this speed and with these words. So if you are expecting something as a solution, the solution is practice. That's it. So you should not be scared of answer writing. You should just know how to write it, and that will only come to you when you will practice as many questions as possible. Right? Make sense? Maybe first 50, 60 words will be answer. First 60 questions will be disaster. But the 61st will be better. The 62nd will be better. So you tell me one thing. When you start to learn to walk, do you start to run first? Or when you are a driver, you automatically go into the busiest street possible and then start to know. You learn slowly. There's a learning curve here. That is the basic point. Maybe in the end, right now I'm not teaching that topic and I need to bring that book. So maybe in the end. So for anybody, we will be talking about answer writing for art and culture. But art and culture answer writing is actually just ancient medieval knowledge plus the specificities of the question plus a conclusion. That's it. The way you learn it is through practice. Can we come back to our discussion? Yes. The same is true for prelims also. The more questions you practice, the better it becomes. See, if you are getting in out of 10, 5, and out of 15, 7, or 4 to 5 and 6 to 7, 50% of marks is good enough if you are basically assessing yourself. UPSC will never give you more than 50% marks. Okay. So we have to discuss the political history of the Sakas. We have to, till this point, discussed in order to just refresh our memory. We've discussed the what we call as evolution of the Indian subcontinent since the Mauryan period, Maurya, Shunga, and Indo-Greeks. Thereafter Sakas. We discuss the political history of the Sakas itself. Then we discuss the history of the Kushanas and the Satavahanas. And we have to discuss Satavahanas for a very specific context of what is called land grants. Further, we have discussed who started Vikram era, who started Saka era, and we have put all of them in chronological order in order to understand any type of question which can be answered through this itself. So, Nikita, you email me, I'll get it sorted. Don't worry. So, when we talk about the Indo-Greeks proper coinage and circulation of, or rather, introduction of gold coins, not circulation, and Menander, there we had Pushyamitra Shunga, Agnimitra, and Devagati. Now, Shakas, as I said, were ethnically what we call as Scythians and used to live in the plains of the Jakstrak River, which is still today there in the whole area of the Uzbekistan to Turkmenistan sector. In the 3rd century BC, when the Chinese Empire started to get consolidated under Huan, that led to multiple tribal movements, and that in turn led to very simply the concept of very simply the Yuchi tribe being pushed. Yuchi then will push the what we call as the Sakas into India, and through a series of movements, the Sakas will enter into the Parthenon sector, become Sindho-Parthenon, and then enter into the Indian subcontinent. The founder, as I told you, is Chastana. See, there are 5 different dynasties together called the Sakas, but we are only worried about, or are we only going to concentrate on two, which are in India? One is called the Kadamka dynasty or the Vaishyan Satrapas. Ujjain was their capital, Chastana was the ruler. The ruler Chastana is important, and the second ruler whose name you need to remember is Rudradaman. Rudradaman is very important because he was the one who added to a very important inscription which is already there. I told you that Chandragupta Maurya made a very important lake which is called the Sudarshan Lake, and Rudradaman I added to the Junagadh inscription as it is called, because he reconstructed the Sudarshan Lake when it got destroyed by flood and a storm. So very simply, the Sudarshan Lake, the Junagadh inscription somehow has entries of each of these rulers, from the building of this in under Chandragupta Maurya to Rudradaman. Actually, Ashoka also reconstructed it. Thereafter, Rudradaman also made it. So very simply, we have Chandragupta Maurya, then repair under Ashoka, then Rudradaman, and even a Gupta ruler who's called Chandragupta II Vikramaditya. He also sent his minister to go and reconstruct this lake. So Sudarshan Lake somehow connects the Mauryas, the Indo-Greeks, the Mauryas, the Shakas, and the Guptas, because there's reference to each one of them on that inscription. So the Junagadh, or what is called the Girnar inscription, is very important for that reason. And generally, these two rulers are the most celebrated of the Kshatrapas, which is Chastana, Vaishyan Kshatrapas, Ujjain. Ptolemy, the Greek scholar, refers to him as Tethys or Tethys. The point is, he founded it, and he very simply, was the one who started the Saka era. There's one more dynasty which was started by Nahapana, which we will discuss, which is a separate family altogether. Chastana was succeeded by his grandson, or was basically he was the grandson of Chastana. Rudradaman, known for his Sudarshan Lake reconstruction. Also, he married a Hindu woman, and we believe that he became a Vedic dynastic practice, basically a Hindu. And he had a basic point of making sure that he goes into matrimonial alliances. He went into matrimonial alliance with the Satavahanas. When I will discuss the Satavahanas with you, I will bring this reference back, which is the fact that Vishishtiputta Satkarni was his son-in-law, which is that his daughter married a Satavahana ruler, which we'll discuss when we reach the Satavahana concept itself. The second dynasty which was there, which was based in Mandsaur, is called the Saka kingdom of the Deccan area, or the Kshatrata dynasty. This was started by Bhumka. That one was started by Chastana. This is Bhumka, or Bhadramukhas, what they're also called. He is again known in Greek texts as Mamras, and he will be defeated by one of the most celebrated Satavahana rulers, Gautamiputra Satkarni, as we know through the Nasik inscription. Again, when I will discuss Satavahanas, I will refer to the Nahapana and the Saka connection, because Sakas were sandwiched between the Kushanas and the Satavahanas. Now, what to remember out of the discussion I've had in the past 5 to 10 minutes with you? The point is Sakas, Chastana, Rudradaman, and Bhumka, Nahapana. Can you remember these 4 rulers? Nothing more, nothing less. No unnecessary information, as it is I don't add anything which is not needed for the examination. Yes, Rudradaman means Rudradaman. What is the name? Why are you called Vivek? That way Rudradaman means Rudradaman. Okay. This is not chronological. This is one. This is the second. This is one family or one dynasty, and this is the second dynasty. Now, before I go to the trade angle and into the aspects related to, see, now we have discussed Shungas, we've discussed the Indo-Greeks, we've discussed the Sakas. Now we need to discuss the Satavahanas, Kushanas, and we also have to discuss economy and society. Society means caste formation. Now, in the history of the Indian subcontinent, if somebody asks you which is the highest point of trade or external trade in India, the answer will be post-Mauryan period. In the post-Mauryan period, we see the rise of trade at a scale which we had not even seen previously or hereafter. The simple point is, all of these dynasties allowed for India to get connected to the world in such a way that we were trading with China, with Southeast Asia, with Egypt, with Africa, and with Sri Lanka. On all sides, we were extremely having what is called extremely lucrative trade. This is a very, very interesting thing, because the more India got fragmented into political units, the more, very simply, it got integrated into the world economy. And this is something as a very important distinction. You see, extraordinary maritime trade developed with China, Iran, Southeast Asia, but the most important source of money was the Roman Empire. We believe that Macedonia and Roman Empire, they literally were bleeding gold and silver to India because of the spices which they wanted. So we have reference to trade with China through Ptolemy's geography, which talks about how there were certain things which China was importing from India, but silk and what we call as Bon China, which is the porcelain utensils, were imported from China into India itself. We also have references to Africa, wherein several Indian commodities were reaching Egypt and Abyssinia or Ethiopia. With Southeast Asia, we know that Swarna Bhumi or Swarna Deepa, we have literary references how Southeast Asia was also very intricately connected, and India was sending cloth, spices, and different types of textiles itself. But the most important trade, which was the single-handed reason for maritime expansion and prosperity, was the Indo-Roman trade. We believe that close to 550 million sequins, this is the currency of the Romans, which is sequins. This is a very big amount. Literal drain of bullion, gold and silver from Europe to India. The fact was from muslin cloth, which is very fine cloth, to calicos, which is standard cotton cloth, to spices, to pearls, everything. And the reason is that Roman coins have been found all across India, as interior as the Northeast and even North India, which was coming through from into the Sangam polities, but then flowing through the Indian economy itself. So we have found number of folds of Roman coins in India, which is a very, very important indicator of the relationship between India and Rome at this point of time, or the Roman Empire. Now, before again, as I go into the Kushana dynasty, I want to discuss something extremely important with you, which is caste formation. Now, before I do that, just to show you, there were multiple trade routes. You don't have to learn this. This is maritime trade route, and there are land routes which connected India. And these are the routes which got connected into the Uttar Path and the Dakshin Path, which allowed for internal and external trade to boom like anything. We also have reference to India in a very interesting text which is called the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea. It's a text which has come out of Africa, Alexandria, but we don't know the author who he is. But we have a list of terms which will be extremely invaluable for you in the examination, which is what are the names of the old ports or the ports in India generally. For example, Broach sector was called Bargaza. Why am I saying this? Why am I telling you don't have to learn this but have to go it through with me generally? Because they can be given in the examination as consider the following, and then we can give you these terms itself. So you have Bargaza, which refers to Broach. Then you have Silena, which refers to the Kalyan sector of Maharashtra. Then you have Supara, which refers to Supara sector of Maharashtra again. Then Tignis is the old name for Calicut or the Egyptian name for Calicut itself. Then Muzrish, as I told you, very important generally. Poduka, which is Arikamedu, again very, very important, Roman trade. You have Gang, which is Tamralipi, which is in Bengal, and we have Masula, which is nothing but the old name of Machilipatnam. So we know that be it the East Coast or be it the West Coast, we have multiple trade centers, again a testimony to the maritime trade of India generally. So now I have to discuss with you something fundamental, but again not part of your course. Okay. So we've discussed political history, specificities of Indo-Greeks, Shakas, and the Shungas. We discussed Shaka era and Vikram era. We discussed the economic system. This is extremely prosperous. Anybody has any issue in these four aspects? If not, then I discuss with you the most important but not important for the examination discussion, which is what we call as caste formation. Yes or no? Yes, no. I want everybody's assertion, yes, no, then only we go forward. Okay, now. See, the discussion I'm going to have with you now is the concept of Varna Samskara. Whilst it would be relevant generally, but for the purpose of the examination, it is of no purpose because it's a subjective area, conceptual area. So what I want from you is that you pay attention. It's a logical process and you will automatically understand what is the concept of caste. So first things first, when I say caste or jati, the word caste comes out of the Portuguese word castas. So today caste, jati are different or are perceived to be different. However, in the context of ancient India and the post-modern period, caste and jati are exactly the same or are interchangeable. Please understand this point very, very clearly. Very, very clearly. Don't have to write anything now. Please understand it. No, nothing at all. I write everything now. As it is, you don't have to write a subjective answer. So what I am telling you in no way pertains to caste today, because what caste is today is basically a product of how the British meddled with the system or crystallized the system. I am discussing with you how early caste formation or jati formation happened. So anything which I am discussing with you here has no relevance in the contemporary context because this is the earliest evidence of Varna Samskara, which we call as jati formation or caste formation. So do not try to bring in modern day parallels because there is no connection in these two things. Now, in order to understand what is called Varna Samskara or caste formation, or what we call as caste jati formation, you need to understand the system. Please pay attention and you will automatically understand. So we have the Varna system. Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. Now, a very important characteristic of the Varna system was that these are compartmentalized categories, which is that they are internally homogeneous and there is endogamy and no scope for exogamy. What do you mean by endogamy? Endogamy means that they marry within themselves, which is that don't use the word caste within Varna. The Brahmins will marry the Brahmins, same Varna. Kshatriyas will marry Kshatriyas, same Varna. Vaishyas will marry Vaishyas, same Varna. Shudras will marry Shudra, same Varna. So very simply, they are homogeneous because they are endogamous. They are endogamous. There is no mixture or internal or external marriages. This point is clear. What do you mean by endogamous? Okay. External marriages. Okay, very good. Now this will be the case till the Mauryan period. Now comes the post-Mauryan period. And the post-Mauryan period, what we see is that very simply, you have Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. But in the post-Mauryan period, there's a problem. The problem is that there's a new set of population which has entered the Indian subcontinent, the Indo-Greeks, the Sakas, the Kushanas, all have entered the Indian subcontinent. Now, the rulers of the Kushana, Shakas, and Indo-Greeks, what if they are getting assimilated, if they have to get assimilated into Indian society, what type of status you will give to the ruling class of the Sakas, Kusanas, Indo-Greeks? You will add them to Kshatriyas, you will add their merchants into Vaishyas, you will add their scholars into Brahmins, you will add their other parts of society into the Shudras. The simple point is that these new categories or these new foreigners had to be assimilated into the Indian society in the first place. In the first place, they had to get assimilated. Please understand this point. Now, very simply, now if I am a Brahmin, and I have always been a Brahmin, I am an indigenous Brahmin if you want to say that I was born in the Indian subcontinent as a Brahmin, and now another person has been designated as a Brahmin, would I not like to have a certain type of distinction with that Brahmin? Yes. Now, very simply, this is called sub-categorization of Varna, wherein the newer population, though assimilated into the Indian subcontinent as the standard categories, they were designated a different status within Varna. And this is basically your concept of Varna Samskara. That I am an A Brahmin, he's a B Brahmin. Both are Brahmins. Varna is the same. But our jati, our caste is different. Basically, the word jati is the first word comes through. Portuguese call it caste, so we will use it separately. But I am A. I am the original. He is the new one. So I am A Brahmin, he's a B Brahmin. My jati is different. I am the Kshatriya, he's also Kshatriya, but he's an Indo-Greek Kshatriya. So he's a different type of Kshatriya. Very simply, this is called sub-categorization. That within the same Varna, there's no supremacy. Please understand this point. There's no concept of supremacy. There is no concept like that. Because these processes will happen in such a way it will become very messy. You will see. I'm telling you the first process. You will see there's one more process which will start to happen. Please understand this point. I say that the first process is integration. Does this integration make sense? Because you have to integrate all these different new types of what we call as foreign population. You integrate them into the same process, into the same categories, but we integrate them as a separate identity within the same category. So I am a Brahmin, but I'm a different type of Brahmin. So there is a designation of a separate identity within the same Varna. This is called sub-categorization. Is this making sense? Because it's the first integration and sub-categorization. Now you will see there will be even more churn. Is this point clear? Is this point clear? Okay. Now, Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. There is new population, assimilated and integrated. Now tell me one thing. If today I go and say to Donald Trump that you are a Brahmin, does it really matter to him that you are a Kshatriya? Does it really matter to him? No. For him, it's a random word. Now what happens is that if I'm an Indo-Greek Brahmin or Indo-Greek Kshatriya, I don't care about these categories. So what happens is exogamous marriages become common with assimilated population, which is intermixing. Now this again will lead to further subcategorization. What do you call a Brahmin father, Brahmin mother? A child is a Brahmin. But if Kshatriya Brahmin, Kshatriya Vaishya, Shudra Brahmin, Shudra Vaishya, the point is once they start to intermix with each other, then what do you call them? Or what designation do you give them? So what you do is that you further subcategorize. And this is called caste formation, which is that Varna Samskara is the exact word. Varna Samskara is the process of proliferation of Varna identity. Two processes are at play. One is assimilation. Second is integration along with it. And third is intermixing. These will in turn lead to further Varna identity formation. Does this make sense? If this makes sense, I'll give you a very simple example of this and you will automatically understand it. I'll give you a more logical example and you will understand it better. Is this making sense? Very simply, when you assimilate, you give them a different identity. When you integrate, then you again give a different identity within same Varna. And when they intermix, then again you have to give another identity. Therefore, it becomes Varna proliferation. I'll give you a very simple example of this. You will understand it better. See, understand it like this. There is a pitcher of water. There's a pitcher of water. It is divided into four compartments. This compartment is Brahmin. This is Kshatriya. This is Vaishya. This is Shudra. These are watertight compartments. And there is some amount of water which is there. Now, if there is no intermixing, if I bring out a Brahmin particle and another Brahmin particle, will they be identical? Yes, because they are homogeneous. They are a homogeneous category right now with no form of newer elements. Now, very simply, in the post-Mauryan period, because of the newer population coming through, there is a new liquid which is introduced into this pitcher. And now there is certain type of circulation within them. This is the first process, which is that the new elements get intermixed into the same category. This will interlead to first process of subcategorization. Now, what happens is the amount of liquid in this pitcher becomes so much that now there is intermixing. If there's intermixing, then in the Brahmin area, will there be only one type of particle? No, there will be one which may have been the original particle, one may have been the original plus the new, one may have been the original, new plus intermixed. What I mean to say is now there's a heterogeneity in this sector, and this heterogeneous becomes caste A or Jati B, Jati C. Are you getting my point now? Caste comes within Varna itself. Caste formation is basically within Varna identity itself. But caste is nothing but the proliferation of the Varna identity. There's no one homogeneous understanding or homogeneous group. Multiple homogeneous groups are there. Now, does this make sense? It does. See, nobody's asking you this. Basically, nobody's asking you this. This will not be a part of your exam generally, but it's important to understand generally. When I will come to the Gupta period, I will add one more process. As of right now, it is intermixing integration. integration and assimilation and intermix. Anybody has any issue here? Purely theoretical area. No type of prelims question can be made from this sector. Therefore, there is no point of actually even going in further detail. But I do hope that you understand what I meant by this processes. Simplified to make you understand much more nuanced, much more complex processes. But now I just wanted to argue that how caste comes within the Varna identity itself, because they are not separate to each other. They are part of the larger concept itself. Yes, no. If yes, then I talk about the Kushanas. Subcaste can also be there. Subcaste can also be there. Sub. We can have multiple identities. A very good example of that would be, for example, the scene which is there in I think Johnny LLB 2, the last climax scene. If you've seen that movie, that he asked that who are you, so he says Brahmin. But then there are multiple identities related to a Brahmin. If you can imagine that scene, if you know that scene in that regard. Hardeep, there's no that question is irrelevant because we don't have evidence for that, and that is of no use to you also. There is always something like that. Okay. So presently, Varna identity has come down. Again, Shamishta, that question cannot be answered by what I've told you. Today, there's a totally different understanding. Yes, in a way, Varna has been presumed, caste has become more dominant. Okay. Now, can I go further? All this was rhetorical, basically of no purpose for the examination. But because you are my student and you deserve to know, I've told you the process. That's it. No, I mean, not even for optional. Optional also, you will not get this type of question. Or for optional, you have to make a very good question to answer this type of question. That they will not make. Nobody can ask you. There are multiple researches, still research going on caste formation, Varna Samskara. I'm giving you a gist of a lot of different books which I've read together to give you a very simplified version of it. But I've given you the working model. It's not that easy. It's much more nuanced, longer process, much more complex, has a lot of contingents on it. But I've given you a very simple model of it in order to make you understand. Okay? Come on. Can we half an hour discuss Kushanas and Satavahanas political history? Okay. So Kushanas, we know that they were nothing but Yuchi tribe. They were sitting in the Central Asian sector, first pushed the Sakas, then were pushed into the Indian subcontinent. Kushanas are much more powerful than the Sakas because they were able to conquer the erstwhile Indo-Greek and the Shunga sector itself, and they give stability to the North Indian sector quite a lot. If I have to actually tell you three things about, if you allow me to, if I should, three things which you have to remember other than whatever is there as the concept, you need to only remember three things: Kanishka, gold coins, largest number circulated, and Hindu plus Greek gods on the coinage. Three things. That's it. Nothing needs other than this. Nothing other than this. But there are other details also. Most largest number of gold coins circulated by them. Largest volume is by Guptas. I write that down also for you. See, circulated, issued, largest volume, largest number. This is Kushanas. This is Indo-Greeks. This is Guptas. What do I mean by volume and number? If I hold a Gupta coin in my right hand and if I hold a Kushana coin in my left hand, which is going to be heavier? Right or left? Right hand. Gupta hand. Because though they had less number of coins, their weightage was quite a lot. So they issued 1 lakh coins, but for 10 tons of gold. They issued 2 lakh coins, but only for 5 tons. So in the examination, look for the word volume and largest number because the answer changes. Who issued it for the first time is Indo-Greeks. So Kushana's most important distinction is the gold thing. Other than that, most celebrated king Kanishka, who is a very important patron of what we call as art and culture. So we know that the Kushanas belong to the Yuchi or the Torachian tribe of Central Asia. They were pushed into the Indian subcontinent because of the movement of the Chinese. First, a capital was Purushapura or Peshawar. Second capital was Mathura when they entered into the Indian subcontinent. Now, if you look at their names, you will realize one thing. Initial names are tribal. Later names are very simply very inspired by Hindu gods itself. First is Kujula Khedivus, then Vima Taktu, then Vima Khedivus. But now you see, Kanishka, Huvishka, Vasudeva. Vasudeva is the name of whom? Is the name of which god? Very good, Vishnu. So very simply, there is a gradational movement if you see. This is called the process of assimilation. They start with the tribal antecedents, but they start to become more and more integrated into the Indian subcontinent, and therefore the names start to change in the way they start to basically take up Hindu names or what we call as Hindu god names. So Kujula Khedivus is the founder of this dynasty. Thereafter, Vima Khedivus, he is the one who issued the gold coins, and his coins actually were now containing images of Shiva, Nandi, Trishul, and he also had a title of Maheshwar on it, which means that now the Shiva concept is coming through, which I will discuss with you after the break, which is the concept of Bhagavatism, which I will discuss. Thereafter, you have Kanishka, greatest ruler of all, issued gold and copper coins, very rare silver coins, but with Greek and Indian gods. He had the images of Buddha, Sakya Buddha, which is Tibetan Buddha, and he assumed two types of titles, Kaisar and Devaputra, which tells us that he has both Greek and Hindu names or Hindu influence. And Kanishka embraced Mahayanic Buddhism, and we know that the fourth Buddhist council happened under him. The simple point is that he was the one who allowed Buddhism to go into Hinayana and Mahayana because he gave importance to both Vasumitra and Ashwaghosha, who was the vice president and who was the president itself. So very simply, Kanishka is considered the most important ruler of the Kushanas because of his power, of his grandeur, of his wealth, and his adoption of both Buddhist, Hindu, and Greek, all three influences together, which we will see in the Mathura school of architecture when we will discuss in art and culture the concept of the schools of architecture or the schools of art in that sense. Can't answer the Gupta coins concept. As I said, largest number of coins were issued by the Kushanas. Largest volume of gold coins were issued by the Guptas. Volume is the weightage. Coin number is number of coins. You can have 2 lakh coins but made out of 5 ton gold, and you can have 1 lakh coins made out of 10 ton gold. It's about how heavy the coin is. That is the concept here. Thereafter, he wrote a lot of text. That is why his art and culture contribution is very important. When we talk about art and culture contribution, please pay attention. This you have to remember is very important. Which is that he wrote the earliest dramas in the Indian subcontinent, which is the Shauriputra Prakashana and the Sudarna Nandana, first and second. Then he also wrote poems, the Buddha Charita, the Vajrasuchi, and the Gandhi Shotra. A very important personality he actually patronized was Charak, the author of the Charak Samhita, which is the encyclopedia of Indian medicine itself, which is Ayurveda. He built different viharas and Buddhist complex at Peshawar, and even stupas were made during the period. Controlled the Silk Route, first to issue gold coins at a large scale, and even put in money for large-scale irrigation works in Pakistan, Afghanistan, Central Asian sector. Because he controlled a very long track, he's controlling this whole sector. Very simply, that allows him to have control over the Silk Route also, and in Indian subcontinent also have a control over the basic understanding and the basic areas in that. Thereafter, when we talk about Kanishka's administration, we don't know too much about it because we believe that they used to divide the empire into Kshatrapas or governors. But thereafter, was it actually centralized? Was it actually decentralized? It was more decentralized than actually centralized, which we will discuss once we come from the break itself. Thereafter, the most important discussion we have after this is about the Satavahanas. So, Kanishka, largest coins, Hindu gods, along with Buddhism and Greek. Kushanas, this is the thing which you need to remember about Kushanas generally. Can you remember it? You can see, I am giving you no unnecessary information other than what is necessary. That is it. Nothing like I'm going to go into his micro history, discussing each and everything which he did know. I really don't care about that. Neither will UPSC care about it. Even if UPSC cares about it, it is not worth going into the micro history of Kanishka or any of the other rulers. Wherever we need to do that, we will do it. So are we all on the same page with regards to the political history? Once I've done the political history of the Satavahanas, I'll give you a break. Don't worry about that because I have to discuss a very important process which the Satavahanas will introduce in the Indian subcontinent after the break, which is called land grant systems or land grant concept. Are we clear with regards to the political history of Kushanas, Indo-Greeks, Shungas and Shakas? Okay, very good. Now, the Satavahanas have a very important distinction, which is that they are Brahmins. Which is the other Brahmin dynasty? Which is the other Brahmin dynasty? Very good, the Shungas. So the Satavahanas are Brahmins. They allowed for Brahmin and Vedic Brahminism to revive itself against Buddhism. But even more than that, Satavahanas have a very interesting concept. They are perceived to be matrilineal, but they basically aren't. For the purpose of the examination, if they say the examiner says matrilineal, it is right, but basically they aren't. What they do is that they respect their mothers by taking mother's name as prefix. Very simply, they are not matrilineal in the sense that it's not that their mother side follows succession. It's just that they take their mother's name to honor them. For example, see, every Satavahana ruler has after Shimukha, has a certain type of name chronology or name sequence. They are called, for example, Raja Gautami Putra Shri Satkarni, Vishishti Putra Shri Pullami, Gautami Putra Shri Yanad Satkarni, Madhari Putra Swami Sakasena, Vashishti Putra Chandrapana Satkarni, Harti Putra Gautami Putra. What this means is, very simply, they are writing Gautami Putra Satkarni, basically the son of Gautami Satkarni, son of Gautami Putra Satkarni. So in a way, they honor their mother by putting their name in front of their name generally. Nothing more. It's not matrilineality, but because the examiner or in some books it is written matrilineal, we go with it. But it is not matrilineality, because matrilineality would mean that mother side succession would happen. No, still father, son is becoming. Just that they take their mother's name. This is called infix or prefix of mother name in front of the ruler's name. This is a very interesting practice which they had, and this is one of the distinctions of the Satavahana kings in that regard. So in the mother side succession means that the mother's family would dictate who's the next ruler rather than fathers. Which would mean that once the son and daughter get married, son goes to the mother's house. That doesn't happen, right? The woman has to go to the man's side rather than the other way around. Matrilineality is the other way around, which is that the mother's side matters. Your mother, my mother, everybody's mother came from her family to your family or my family. If the other way around happened, it would then become matrilineality. It's called patrilineality. Making sense? What is matrilineal? What we call as matrilineal and patrilineal? Hardeep? Okay. So in the post-modern period, Satavahanas united and ruled over Maharashtra, Karnataka, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh. And the Matsya Puran tells us about a very long genealogy of rulers. But we believe they are the only matrilineal dynasty, not technically, but for purpose of examination. And they had multiple capitals. And if you have seen the 2023 paper, see, I taught it in class just 2 months before the examination. The students who paid attention to Dhanyakantaka got the first question in set B as which region does Dhanyakantaka refer to? And Dhanyakantaka basically is one of the capitals of the Satavahanas, which would mean the Andhra sector itself. So sometimes the UPSC, in order to get nitty-gritty questions, goes into these type of details. But yes, now we don't expect this type of question to come again, but we did discuss this in class. And I'll show it to you in 2023. The first question was this only. Where does Dhanyakantaka refer to in historical geography? Now, rulers. Simukha, Satkarni, Hala, but the most important ruler is Gautami Putra Satkarni. He is considered the most powerful ruler of this whole set itself. Vishishtaputta Pullami and Yajnashri Satkarni is the last one. So let's talk about them one by one and then we'll take a break. Simukha, he is the founder of the Satavahana dynasty and he was active after the death of Ashoka itself, built both Jain and Buddhist temples itself. Satkarni one, he's the third ruler, but he is important because he expanded the empire. He was able to conquer Kalinga after the Jain king Karavela was dead. He pushed back on the Shungas also. He ruled over Madhya Pradesh, but the most interesting thing is that he used to call himself Lord of Dakshin Patha, which is that he used to control the Dakshin Path. Therefore, very simply, the Lord of Dakshin Patha he used to call himself. His queen Nanika used to call him Dakshin Patha Pati, which is that my Pati is the Lord of Dakshin Path, and revived Vedic Brahmanism and performed the Ashwamedh, which had become extremely uncommon by this point of time. Thereafter, the concept of Hala compiled why are we discussing it? Because he compiled a very interesting text called Gata Saptati. Gata Saptati is a very important Prakrit work of poems. Prakrit, that is why it is important. And his minister, Gundya, composed Brihad Katha. You would feel that why are you telling us these names? These names tend to be sprinkled around in match the following question. Brihad Katha, Gata Saptasati, very standard text these are. So you just need to know them generally. Then comes the most celebrated rulers of all. The first, Gautamiputra Satkarni. He expanded the kingdom throughout the Deccan sector itself. And his mother, Gautami Balashri, in the Nasik inscription, calls him a very interesting name. And the name is Eka Brahmana Kshatriya Dapa Manadama, which is that the one who destroys the egos of Kshatriyas. And that is why we know that he actually was the one who defeated the Shakas, even the Pallavas, Shaka Pallavas, and the Greeks, and even the different rulers in the Lok sector itself. And that is why he is considered the most celebrated and the most important ruler of this sect itself. Took different titles, Raja Raja and Maharaja, and even gave Buddhist monks land. This is a very important point you need to again understand, that a very outstanding feature of our history is that even though the ruler was of a certain religion, tolerance was something which was followed quite a lot. And throughout history, we see multiple rulers of multiple religions actually following a tolerant outlook towards other religions. Something which we lack today, however, something which was there in the ancient Indian texts and ancient Indian period itself. Rulers did not stop with their own religion, rather they went beyond and patronized all religions in the best way possible, which only shows a concept of tolerance throughout ages in the Indian subcontinent. Thereafter, Vishishtriputta Pullami, immediate successor, he was able to establish himself properly in the Andhra sector, was able to even take back areas which the Shakas had fought and took. Last ruler, Yajneshri Satkarni, he will start to lose a lot of territory, but was a lover of trade and navigation, and trade flourished under him quite a lot. We talk about Satavahana administration when we come back. Now, contradiction in the timeline of Satkarni, as I said, these are based on different texts. So there can be any type of contradiction. Multiple texts talk about multiple timelines. So it could be anything. Okay, now, before I take a break, first I'll take one previous question with you, and then we'll take a break. But before I do that, we have gone through for close to which one to follow. Nobody's asking you the date. First things first, ancient. We started Paleolithic, Mesolithic, Neolithic, Indus Valley, Megalithic, this, that. We're now in the postmodern period. When it comes to political history, we are more or less through. Shunga, tell me the name of one Shunga ruler. Then only I go forward and take the questions, or take the question. Tell me the name of one Shunga ruler. Pushamitra Shunga, very good, okay. Tell me the name of an Indo-Greek ruler. Rudradaman is not a Shunga ruler, is not a Shunga king. Like this. Agnimitra is also right. Tell me the name of an Indo-Greek ruler. Not Augustus Caesar. Augustus Caesar is a Roman king. Menander, Milindapana, Milinda, whatever you want to call it. Menander. Augustus Caesar, Trojan are Roman kings. Tell me a name of a Saka ruler. Chastana, Rudradaman, Chastana, Nahapana, Bhumka, all are correct. And Gautamiputra Satkarni belongs to the concept of Satavahana. So can I, in a way, close, or before I take a break, presume that our political history is done? Because when I come back, I discuss something very fundamental with you, which is going to destroy the Indian subcontinent. It was started by the Satavahanas. So if I have your permission, then we move forward. If you want to ask something, you want to call, it is totally your thing, you want to call, whatever it may be. After this point, no discussion. You can see I have already simplified everything for you. You can already see that I have not put unnecessary facts in the PPT itself. Whatever fact is written in the PPT is more or less enough for that ruler. Can I move forward and take that one previous question before we go and take a break? Need to learn full information from PPT. Yes, when it comes to the PPT, when I mark it, you have to remember it for sure. Matsya, Chinmay has a mythological connection. Matsya Puran, it's called the Matsya Puran. It's related to the avatar of Vishnu itself. We'll discuss that. But it's not a random name, but related to the concept of Vishnu's avatars, Lord Vishnu's avatars. Okay. Now, if I wrote your short notes, that is totally on you. If you note down something which I've written and you see, if you write something down, it generally helps because that way you're writing it, so it goes into your mind. Totally your call what you want to do. If you can print, you want to print the annotated PPT, sure. Okay. Take this question. With reference to forced labor, Vishti in India during the Gupta period, still Gupta period question, but Vishti we've done. Vishti, you think of it like Mauryan period. Same question. Which of the following statements is correct? It was considered a source of income of the state, a sort of tax paid by the people. It was totally absent in the Madhya Pradesh and Kathiawar region. The forced laborer was entitled for weekly wages. The eldest son of the laborer was sent for forced labor. Perfect. Still, some of you 14 and A is the answer. Nothing can be totally absent. I said that robbery is totally absent from the Madhya Pradesh and Kathiawar sector. This is called an extreme statement. Totally incorrect. If you are forced labor, why would you get a weekly wage? Still incorrect. And the eldest son of a laborer was sent as forced labor. Again, makes no sense. The whole family goes or the one person goes. Totally incorrect. Yes, Vishti was, as I told you, Bartan Majane ka kaam, which is basically washing the utensils for the state so as to pay a tax. Yes, A. Yeah. So we can take a break now. We'll be back at 5:30, and this session is over. You will join from part C, last section, 5:30 to 8, and we'll discuss and reach till the Gupta period in that regard. Done? Yes? Done. Okay. So see you at 5:30.